It's critical for you to understand your sensors and the things that affect them, as they act as your eyes in the battle space. After all, you can't shoot what you can't see. But now it's time to learn how they actually work. How to evade detection while spotting the enemy, and how to fool your opponent is absolutely paramount to a successful engagement. Let's begin. Select the ANS Small Beginnings.
Awaiting orders, Commander.
The first thing we'll talk about is your signature size and methods of signature control. Active sensors like radar detect enemy ships by bouncing radio waves off of them. The physical size of your ship, combined with the angle of surface and the cross-sectional area from the viewing angle, affect the size of the return energy. In other words, the same ship will appear on sensors at a longer range if its broadside is facing the enemy versus being bow on. The smallest radar cross-section for the Rains frigate, for example, is from above and below the port and starboard stern. You can see the size of your signature by hovering over the signature summary on the ship information bar. There are other contributing factors to the size of your signature, including what modules are active and how many ships are nearby. Right now there is another ship nearby, which is boosting the size of the radar return and making it so the enemy can see us at a longer range. Let's lower our footprint. Move the Small Beginnings more than 250 meters away from the Dusty Tome, so you won't contribute to each other's signatures. Don't move towards the enemy, we want to keep our current range. If you hover over the signature summary with your mouse, you will see the nearby ships modifier is gone, reducing our overall footprint.
Stopping the ship.
It's good, but we'll need to do better if we want to hide ourselves from the enemy. On the ship list, the yellow icon indicates that the ship is spotted by the enemy sensors and is being tracked. Similarly, a red crosshair here would show that the ship is locked by the enemy's fire control radar. We have a good set of tools to reduce our radar footprint even further. Let's see what we can do to shake the enemy off. This switch will toggle our radar systems off, greatly reducing our footprint. This switch disables our communication suites, which can provide a modest reduction in our signature size. Go ahead and turn off both of these now, and see how it affects our signature size. You may be surprised to see that even with your radars off, you are still seeing tracks. This is because the ANS Dusty Tome still has the radars and comms on, and is transmitting tracks to the Small Beginnings, sharing their own data. Hover over Signature Summary with your mouse to see how changing these emission settings altered your signature. If you didn't move too close to the enemy, you'll notice the yellow icon indicating the ship is being tracked has disappeared. If you are still being tracked, it might be because your hull is at an angle that maximizes radar reflections. Even then, a lower signature size reduces the distance at which the enemy can detect you, even if you are well inside their maximum sensor range. Disabling emissions also has the added benefit of making you undetectable by passive sensors. Passive radar sensing is typically able to detect you 125% further away from your maximum radar range, so being invisible to it has an obvious benefit. The downside, of course, is that turning off your radars means you can't detect threats as easily. Similarly, disabling comms means that the ship is no longer transmitting any tracks it sees to friendly ships in the fleet. Ships with their comms off will still be able to receive tracks from other transmitting ships, so they can act as a silent shooter. Go ahead and re-enable both the radar and the communications on the Small Beginnings. Now it's time to experience what having your sensors jammed feels like. Confusing, right? The enemy jammer is saturating our radar with radio waves, making it difficult for our systems to find legitimate contacts. This noise of contacts is what we are seeing, instead of the real radar picture. Notice that we lost track of the ship in front of us, but the one on the right is still clear as day. This is because jamming only affects the area around the direction that is being jammed. Keep this in mind when you're trying to use jamming to protect your own ships. We do have a tool available that can be used in a pinch, the burn-through sweep. Not all radar modules have this, but allows for a short, high-powered sweep in all directions. To execute the burn-through sweep, open the action menu and select the BRN or burn-through command on the top. Then, as quickly as you can, attempt to lock the target. You can use the X key for the lock-on shortcut.
Aye, Commander. Locking them up. We're being jammed.
Burn-through sweeps will show a unique icon for detected targets, making it easier to spot the target through the noise. The icon will linger for about 30 seconds to give you time to lock on. Locked targets are much less susceptible to being lost through jamming. That's it. Most of the time you'll be able to maintain a fire control lock in spite of jamming. But keep in mind that jamming power stacks, so a fleet with enough jammers active at the same time will break any lock. Because burn-through sweeps use a much higher power output, they also have the added benefit of being able to spot smaller, weaker contacts at a greater range. This is useful for finding small scout ships or approaching missiles. The downside is that the higher power output runs the risk of causing damage to the amplifiers every time you use it, so be careful not to burn out your radars. Your other option for burning through jamming is simply to get closer to the enemy, brute forcing your way in. Just try not to get sunk in the process. Jamming the enemy ourselves can be as easy as right-clicking their track and selecting our jammers with the EW weapons menu. However, these targets are far enough apart that they won't both be covered by the cone centered on only one of them. The ANS Dusty Tome is carrying a blanket radar jammer. We'll use that to jam both targets by catching them both in the jammer's cone of effect by targeting a position between both contacts. You can target a weapon on a position in space by opening the action menu by right-clicking in open space instead of on a track, and use the sphere widget to target a position between the two contacts. Remember to use the tactical view, as it will give you precise bearings for positional targeting. When in the tactical view, you'll see each track's position projected onto the sphere of the widget. To blind both of them, aim for a point between those two projected positions.
Activated.
Remember that you can change the radius of the widget by holding left control and drawing the radius in or out. And like that, they can't see us anymore, just like what happened to us. But they can also use the same tactics like burn-throughs or approaching us to sift through the jamming. While jamming power is additive, it is not linear. The more jamming signals that are present in an area, the more they begin to create destructive interference and cancel each other out. Think of it like diminishing returns. Even if you don't successfully jam the enemy's tracking of your ships, an active jamming signal will still reduce their sensor accuracy. This is particularly devastating for point defenses, which are shooting at very small, very fast targets and therefore require great accuracy. Using standoff jamming in coordination with your missile salvos will make them devastatingly effective. Let's try it. Fire off the missile salvo at the enemy ship ahead, and see how their defenses react with your jammer active. Watch how erratically the enemy defenses are firing. Point defense requires pinpoint precision, which your jamming is preventing by flooding their sensors with far too many false contacts.
Missile out.
When using jamming to cover a missile attack, you'll still need to watch out for airburst point defenses like flak guns, as they don't require much accuracy. Most importantly, the blanket jammer has a 90-second firing time. This is to prevent the amplifiers from overheating and being damaged. However, there are times where you absolutely have to be able to use the system, or you'll lose the ship. In that case, you might not care whether the module destroys itself. This is what Battle Short is for. Select the ANS Dusty Tome if it isn't already. This is the toggle for the Battle Short mode. When this is on, all equipment safeties are disabled, and the equipment will continue to run until it destroys itself. Reserve it for emergency use, where you'll hear an endless litany of profanity from the damage control officer. When Battle Short is enabled, active components with active duration timers will periodically be damaged. However, they will only begin taking damage when they exceed their normal firing time. One last thing to note is that most electronic warfare modules are single-cycle systems. That means they won't repeatedly fire on the same target after their cooldown period. You'll need to designate a new target every time the system comes off cooldown. Jamming is an extremely powerful tactic when used at the right time. Use it to cover your retreat, confuse enemy fire, cover your missiles, and anything else you can think of. With that out of the way, that should do it for sensors and EWAR. I hope I made it easy to follow, because the guidebooks on these are nightmarish. I'll see you back at the academy.